I believe I am live. I'll give it a couple seconds here. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Julie here. I'm just going to check to see if we are in fact live. Give me 1 second here. All right, we are perfect. Lovely. I'll turn that down. All right. So, welcome. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whenever it is that you may be watching this, whether you will join me live on Wednesday, May the 11th, the day I am creating and delivering this webinar, or maybe you're watching on the replay, maybe on the website, YouTube channel, or our Fit Over 40 Facebook group, wherever you're watching from, welcome. And if you are going to join me live today, I'd love to know where you're watching from, or if you're watching the replay, just drop a comment to let me know that you're here and checking out this information. So I am Julie Hodge. Welcome to the Wednesday Wellness Live webinar. Okay, this is my Women's Wellness series, most Wednesdays between noon and 12:30 Mountain Standard Time, where I discuss issues that pertain to women's specific fitness, nutrition, and health, and usually with that hormone-related touch. So today we are talking about the endocrine disruptors and the 7 hormone tests that you can request from your medical practitioner or naturopath. And it is part 2 of our 4-part hormone weight loss program series for the month of May. So, of course, I'm Julie Hodge, the owner and founder of Julie Hodge Fitness and Fitness Over 40. And as a certified personal trainer, certified nutrition coach, and hormone-based fitness specialist, I have supported hundreds of women in moving and feeling and eating their best and getting those optimal health results from the inside out. So today, again, we are going to be focusing on what causes hormone imbalance. I'll be talking about things like exposure to hormone disruptors, gut issues as well, and some of the big gut issues that can also lead to hormone imbalance. I'll talk about why that is, and the 7 hormone tests that you would like to request from your doctor if you feel like there is some imbalance going on. So again, just to reiterate, last week in week 1, I gave you some ideas about how to establish a plan, a guide to eating out, because summer's coming and we eat out a lot more, barbecues, etc. Holidays, I spoke about hormones and weight, how to know whether hormones are a factor in your weight gain or your stalled weight loss, the hormones that affect that. And this week, we're going to talk about what causes it and some of those endocrine disruptors. So if you have a piece of paper or a pad and you want to take notes, please feel free to take notes or ask questions. I would love that. And if you're interested in a copy of the presentation afterwards, just reach out to me directly. So let's dig in. I'll try to make this one short and sweet. Again, if you're watching the replay, just drop a comment down below saying a replay so that I know that you're here. So let's chat about endocrine disruptors, okay, and hormone disruptors. So we'll pick up where we left off. So what causes hormone disruption? Okay, so we have some exposures to hormone disruptors that I am going to talk about today. So bear with me as I make sure that I look at my notes so I don't miss anything. So how many of you have heard of endocrine disruptors, first of all? If you're watching me live, I'd love to know that. If you're watching on the replay, I would love to know. If you know what an endocrine disruptor is, maybe drop a few ideas of what that might be in the comments, okay? There's no wrong answer. Chances are if you're wondering something, somebody else is too. All right, so you've heard of endocrine disrupting chemicals. If you haven't, unfortunately, our environment is loaded with these kinds of chemicals. They're toxic, persistent, so they're more stable, and they can bioaccumulate in our bodies, okay? It's not just women going through perimenopause that they can occur, and it's everybody. Now, as the name implies, these chemicals disrupt the endocrine system, and they can wreak havoc on our hormones. We're exposed to these toxins from food, from water, from the environment, and from the products that we use in and around our body on a daily basis. Okay, so endocrine disrupting chemicals can interfere with the endocrine system through several different mechanisms, which I'm going to talk about. Some disruptors can bind to the hormone receptors in our cells. When they do so, they inhibit the hormone that is intended for that receptor from binding. Okay, so if an endocrine disruptor binds to that receptor on the hormone, it in effect prevents the actual hormone that's intended to be on that receptor from doing so. All right, so if you get that visual. Others disrupt normal hormone communication and function as well. So I'm going to go on and talk about some of the major disruptors as are listed here. So we've got adrenal hormone disruptors, thyroid hormone disruptors, estrogen, leptin, and insulin hormone disruptors are going to be the top 5 that I speak about. Okay, so adrenal hormone disruptors. These are things like DDT, if you've ever heard of that, mercury, and polybrominated diphenyl ethers. In brackets, PBDE 91011. Not the show. 91011. So these, the adrenal glands, okay, so your adrenals, they are very sensitive to toxins, particularly the ones listed above. Again, DDT, mercury, polybrominated diphenyl ethers, okay, they're very much susceptible to that. And those toxins are found in imported products, for example, the DDT, some seafoods, dental fillings, the mercury, if you have older fillings, I don't believe they do those anymore, and flame retardants, okay, the PBDE, that's that polybrominated diphenyl ethers. So these are a few of those adrenal hormone disruptors. So just be aware if you have any of these around your environment, perhaps you do have those old dental fillings, be aware of what kind of seafood you're eating. Okay, is it farmed or is it wild caught? What type of seafood is it? Just so that you can be aware if that might be a culprit in what's happening. Now, the second one I want to talk about are the thyroid hormone disruptors. These, I'm sure you've heard of, are things called, no, I'm sorry, I never know how to pronounce this word. Phthalates, okay? Phthalates, BPA is another one, and perfluorinated chemicals, aka PFCS number 12, okay? Phthalates, BPA, and perfluorinated chemicals. These are found in perfumes, so phthalates, okay? Canned foods, dental sealants, BPA, for example, drinking water, fish from contaminated waters, stain protectors, and non-stick cookwares. In non-stick cookwares, that's where you're tending to find those perfluorinated chemicals, aka PFCS. So from perfumes to canned foods to dental sealants to drinking water and fish, and stain protectors, on your furniture, even in your vehicle, and non-stick cookware. Just think how many of those we're exposed to almost on a daily basis. Okay, some of us. So while these endocrine disruptors affect the entire endocrine system, they have a particularly disruptive effect on thyroid hormones. So, just kind of reaching here, like if this and that, like if you're experiencing what you believe, you just don't feel right, you've got some imbalances, but you're eating, for the most part, a whole healthy nutritional plan with, organic foods where possible to get a little bit more nutrient and vitamin and mineral density. You're exercising, you're doing mind body work, relatively unstressed, but still look to some of these endocrine disruptors. Okay, they affect pretty much everyone. Now, the third one I want to talk about are those estrogen hormone disruptors. These are things like pharmaceutical chemicals, biphenolics, and organochlorine pesticides. These are found in medications, okay, prescribed to women like birth control and hormone replacement therapy, which is also known as HRT. So these are the pharmaceutical chemicals. They're also plastics. Okay, that's your bisphenolics is in plastics, and agricultural pesticides and home pest control. Okay, those are your organochlorine pesticides. These types of endocrine disruptors have a profound impact on our estrogen levels. So think about all of these things as a woman that we're exposed to, affected by birth control right there, okay? Hormone replacement therapy, HRT. So if you're going to talk with your doctor about hormone replacement therapy, talk about the natural, non-synthetic, non-chemical, okay? As natural as much as possible. But look at what you're drinking from, eating from, plastics, okay? For example, and I've said it before, swap out drinking from plastics. Have your, fresh, distilled or, filtered water in glass containers. Look at what you're putting on your yard, what's being sprayed around you, okay, from the pest control. So they have a very profound effect on your estrogen levels. So just please be aware of those pharmaceutical chemicals, bisphenolics, and organochlorine pesticides. So 2 more to talk about before I get to a lot of what you guys are waiting for, which are those 7 tests. So leptin disruptors. These are things like benzoic acid, sugar, and artificial sweeteners. So a little more context to this. If you recall last week, we talked a lot about leptin. Okay, leptin being the are you full? Okay, it tells you, sorry, if you're hungry. So a lot of people not leptin not doing its job. You're not getting that I'm hungry signal. Okay, so leptin hormone disruptors, benzoic acid, sugar, and artificial sweeteners can be disrupting that hormone, disrupting that signal on the receptor, not letting leptin do its job to say, hey, you're hungry. Okay. So that's a leptin hormone disruptor. Benzoic acid is a common food preservative. So start reading those labels. Okay. What are these preservatives? And it's been used for decades. We all know what sugar is, obviously. Okay. Sugar in any of its forms, highly processed, white sugar, brown sugar, you name it, sugar. And yes, artificial sugar is just as bad, in my opinion, and in many scientific studies' opinion, even worse than white sugar or regular, sugar, processed sugars. Okay. These disrupt the hormone leptin among other hormones, but we're just keeping this specific to leptin at this point. So take a look or think about what are you exposed to? How much sugar are you having? What about the benzoic acid as a common food preservative? Now, if you want to do your best at avoiding or minimizing as much of the food preservative chemicals as you can, you want to choose whole foods as often as possible. And I call that the WYSIWYG food. What you see is what you get. Banana, potato, turnip, whatever it is. Okay. A grain, a whole grain. It is what it is. Now let's talk about insulin hormone disruptors. And this is a biggie. Okay. Especially in our highly processed food, highly grab and go, quick fix kind of society. This is a biggie. So insulin hormone disruptors, industrial products, pesticides, again, laminators, and many plastic products that we use every day. Flame retardants, that's common in things like clothing and furniture, and several heavy metals. So nearly all chemicals are associated with an increase in obesity. Okay, I'm going to read that again. Nearly all chemicals are associated with an increase in obesity. And as you are learning or just learned, there are many endocrine disrupting culprits out there. The above is just some of the chemicals known to cause and shown to cause increased weight and obesity in both children and adults alike due to the disruption of the hormone insulin. Okay, so again, looking for ways you can minimize or avoid these insulin disruptors, look at industrial products, pesticides, laminators, and other plastic products of everyday use. Remember, plastic versus glass, okay? And several heavy metals. So those are your 5. Okay, those are your 5 big exposure to hormone disruptors. All right. And now let's talk about gut issues, because we're going to tie in the gut issues with the hormone imbalance and endocrine disruption in a minute here. But I want to talk about gut issues. So the first we're going to talk about is leaky gut syndrome. You may have heard of it. You might be experiencing it. Leaky gut syndrome, also known as intestinal permeability, is caused when your intestinal lining is damaged and can no longer provide that healthy barrier between the gut and your bloodstream. Okay, so it's damaged. Molecules that should never be able to get to leave the intestines and enter the bloodstream are now able to do so. This triggers an inflammatory response, stresses the liver, and leads to hormone disruption. Okay, so you've got your intestines and you've got that nice protective barrier between the gut and your bloodstream. But what happens is it becomes permeable and those things get through into the bloodstream. That's one thing to look at. The second one is LIBO, L-I-B-O, LIBO. LIBO, also known as large intestine bacterial overgrowth. Okay, because as you know, in our intestine, we have the large intestine and the small. So LIBO, large intestine bacterial overgrowth. This condition is commonly known as, probably better known as, gut dysbiosis. All right, and you may have experienced it or know someone who is struggling with that. That is one of the gut issues that we face. The third one is SIBO, a little bit more commonly known. SIBO is defined as an excessive growth of bacteria in the small intestine. So while we have many bacteria in our digestive system, we want the bacteria to do their job. But many of these should be in the large intestine, not in the small intestine. Disruption in the regular mechanisms that control bacterial growth, low gastric acid secretion, and poor gut motility are common causes of SIBO, right? And then I want to talk about estrobolome dysfunction. Okay, so the next thing, I think I've got this down here. Let me just switch my thing. Estrobolome dysfunction. The estrobolome are the specific bacterial genes in your gut microbiota. So think of the garden of your gut, okay, that are capable of estrogen metabolism in the body through the production of enzyme B glucuronidase. Your estrobolome can be depleted in the same way your other gut microbes are. Okay, so that's estrobolome dysfunction. We've got leaky gut syndrome, LIBO, SIBO, estrobolome dysfunction. Now, I'm talking about the endocrine disruptors, talking about gut issues. Why am I talking about gut issues? Well, here is how those gut issues and problems can cause hormonal imbalance. Let's move on. I've got some notes here. So when we're talking about how gut problems affect your hormonal balance, we want to talk about the thyroid. So approximately 20% of your thyroid hormones are activated in the gut. Bacteria in your GI tract, okay, your digestive system, produce an enzyme that converts T4, which is the inactive thyroid hormone, into T3. So you've got T4, which is your inactive thyroid hormone. It activates into T3, okay? So approximately 20% of your thyroid hormones are activated in the gut. So if you've got gut issues, not a good thing for those thyroid hormones. Also, endotoxins, okay? These are internal toxins that are produced by gut bacteria. Okay, it's not a toxin from an environmental thing or that you're ingesting or putting on your body. This endotoxin is produced by gut bacteria in your body. They have been shown to negatively affect thyroid hormones as well. Thirdly, inflammation from the gut, okay, and that can be minor inflammation or major inflammation, which can cause a lot of symptoms and damage, will raise cortisol levels. Okay, so many who have chronic levels of inflammation are then experiencing a lot of hormonal imbalances and some of those symptoms and unwanted signs associated with that. Okay, moving on to the gut bacteria. So the gut bacteria, okay, communicates messages to the brain. So that's like the gut-brain connection. Very, very, very important. It does so via the vagus nerve. How many of you have heard of the vagus nerve? Okay, so that gut bacteria communicates messages to your brain via the vagus nerve. If the gut bacteria are imbalanced, it disrupts the communication, leading to higher than normal cortisol levels. So really important takeaways here to be aware of all of this, to know how you can then kind of work with what is and make those lifestyle or habit kind of food nutrition changes in your life. So not only does your gut microbiota, okay, so think about your gut garden, okay, not only does that help to regulate reproductive hormones, it also indirectly influences these hormone levels if thyroid hormones and cortisol levels become unbalanced. So since thyroid hormones and cortisol are higher up on the hormonal hierarchy, okay, tongue twister, they have a profound downstream effect on the lower tier hormones like estrogen and progesterone, like that trickle down effect. Okay, so those are a few ways that those hormone imbalance can come about due to those gut imbalance issues. Now, let's talk about some factors that affect your gut health. Now, I mean, most of us have, had to take medication at some point or another. This is one of the top things that affect our gut health. So we want to take a look at antibiotics. So antibiotics, sometimes necessary. Overuse of antibiotics can harm our health. If we're over antibioticed, we basically strip away the good bacteria from our gut garden, and we get a proliferation of the unwanted bacteria. Okay. So not only the oral antibiotics, okay, but also the use of things like antibacterial soaps, wipes, and sprays. How many people have just been spending the last 2+ years now with an overwhelming amount of antibacterial products in and on their body? So if you are noticing more imbalance, more gut issues coming out here than 2.5 years previous, this is definitely something that you want to look at. Okay. Remember, there is a reason for things. Too much of a good thing can cause an abundance of what we don't want to be happening in our gut, which can affect the gut brain balance, which can affect your hormones and become a disruptor. So antibiotics kill both good and bad bacteria. All right. And we want our good bacteria. Also, another is chlorinated drinking water, a necessary evil. So I would say use a reliable filtration system. Okay. Whether you have like the carbon filtration system, or one of the higher end water filtration systems built into your plumbing, or even you use some sort of a filter in your fridge, whatever it is, make sure you try your best to filter the water. All right. So we can remove a lot of what is going to create that gut imbalance. Now, another huge is refined sugar and processed foods. These foods promote the growth of bad bacteria. They're hugely inflammatory, as we've known and as we know, and they hinder the growth of the beneficial bacteria. So if you want more good bacteria, you've got to be willing to let go of the things that are creating more of the bad bacteria or killing off your good bacteria. Okay, this is for optimal health, for hormone balance, for all the good things, the energy, the sleep, all these things. Next comes hormonal birth control methods. Synthetic hormones disrupt the gut estrobolome. End of sentence, period, all caps. All right. Next is over-the-counter medications, especially antacids. Okay, so say you have heartburn, you're taking antacids, Tums like it's going out of style, and pain or fever reducers, Tylenol, Advil, Motrin, all these things. Okay, really watch that, because they can again be interfering with the good bacteria and wiping that out, and you've got a proliferation of the bad, creating inflammation. Again, problems with insulin and the rest of it. And then finally, again, I'll just mention toxins from pesticides, herbicides, things like glyphosate, and environmental chemicals are all going to negatively shift the microbiome. Now, let's talk about a few other causes. Some of them are going to seem pretty similar to what I just told you about. But again, being aware of what can cause this allows you to look at how many of these are in your daily life. What do you have the control to reduce or eliminate? What do you not? And work with what you can. All right. So, for example, if you want to avoid a lot of the chemicals from conventionally farmed foods, right, from the use of GMO and all those synthetic chemicals, you can opt for looking at organic or starting to farm your own foods, like indoor garden towers, gardens outside through the summer, and then can your food and store through the fall and winter. Going in on like a co-op share for a farm with friends and family, whatever that might be. So now I want to talk about those other causes of hormone imbalance. So variety of many different factors, okay, including things like certain medications, immune dysregulation, inflammation, intrauterine devices like copper IUDs, menopause itself, okay, methylation impairments. And usually you'll know that I've seen most women understanding that when they get a Dutch test. The more in-depth Dutch test has quite often brought to light any methylation impairments, which can be quite serious. So you want to get a handle on that. Mold exposure, nutritional deficiencies, poor diet, poor sleep, prolonged stress, reproductive issues like PCOS and endometriosis, and a sedentary lifestyle. These are all other big time causes of hormonal imbalance. So if you have any questions on that, if anything comes as a surprise, or if as I'm explaining this, you're kind of thinking, oh, all these things that you're exposed to, and is there a correlation? By all means, feel free to share, comment, or ask questions. And if you're watching on the replay, I'd love to know. So type replay and let me know what it is that is making a big impact, or the biggest takeaway that can support you in balancing hormones from today's webinar. So without further ado, I will talk about the 7 hormone tests to requests from your doctor. But I will say first, as a caveat, that I always will recommend for a really good deep dive into your unique hormonal makeup right now, the Dutch test. Okay, but let's talk about the 7 others. So the first one I want to talk about is the adrenal test. Okay, so to get to the root of imbalance, ask your doctor for thorough testing. Advocate for yourself. If everything shows you, if a blood test shows negative, but you feel anything, or normal and you feel anything but, dig deeper and advocate for more. Here are those 7 tests. So number 1 is adrenal. This is a 24-hour adrenal stress index. It's a saliva test that tracks your cortisol levels and HPA, that's your brain adrenal axis dysfunction. The second one, thyroid. So mainstream medicine, the average blood test typically runs just TSH and T4, the inactive thyroid hormone, to determine thyroid hormone dosage. Some underlying thyroid problems, however, don't show up in standard lab tests. And if those of you who've had it like a normal, but you're not feeling normal, you know this, okay? So for example, if you're dealing with thyroid conversion issues, thyroid resistance, or autoimmune attacks against the thyroid, like Hashimoto's or Graves' disease, these issues may be difficult to determine in standard tests. So a complete thyroid panel involves looking at many other labs, such as free and total T3, which is your active thyroid hormone, reverse T3, and thyroid antibodies to rule out autoimmune thyroid problems. So we've got adrenal, we've got thyroid, we've also going to talk about estrogen. So I'm going to talk about estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone all together here. So urine or saliva tests, when testing these, are most accurate. The gold standard, as I mentioned, for female reproductive hormone testing is Dutch, okay? That stands for dried urine test for comprehensive hormones, the Dutch test. Once you get a hormone baseline, okay? So you want to get that hormone baseline. The following tests might also help better identify possible sources for weight gain, okay? So in addition to that Dutch test for estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, looking at things like fasting insulin. Okay, this is going to look for serum insulin, C-peptide, fasting blood sugar, and HGB A1C. All right. And then last but not least, fasting leptin. This is serum leptin. All right. So those are the 7 tests that you want to request from your doctor. And notice how it's not one blood test. Okay. So if you want more on that, I will perhaps type this out in the comments so that you kind of get an idea of what to ask for so you can kind of advocate. But if you have questions or comments, by all means, feel free to reach out privately or type them in the comments below. And I would love to know what your biggest takeaway was and is from today. Okay, so send me those questions. And so for today, that's a wrap. And I also wanted just to let you know, give you a little heads up that next week, what's coming. So next week, I'm going to talk about diet and hormones. Okay, so how food affects hormones so that you have that empowerment. And I'm also going to talk about 9 foods to watch out for if you're looking at balancing and more optimal hormone regulation. All right, guys. So thank you so much. Again, if you have any questions or need some support, you can reach out privately. You can also visit www.balanceyourhormones.online for a lot more information, for programs, for meal plan access, for coaching, whatever supports you need to help you feel better from the inside out and thrive through your perimenopause and menopause years, not just survive. All right, ladies, thank you so much for listening. Have a great week and stay tuned next Wednesday for part 3. All right, have a good one.